The story begins with three reckless and adventure-hungry youngsters who are out in the middle of the ocean, having the time of their lives riding jet skis. Surrounded by deep blue water and an endless open sky, the trio speeds forward without a single care in the world, slicing through the waves. In the beginning, it is pure thrill. However, it doesn't take long for the initial excitement to wear off. Craving a bigger rush, they decide that true fun lies in doing something far more dangerous. Without thinking twice, they turn their jet skis and head deeper into the treacherous open ocean. They soon reach a remote zone where there is absolutely no help, no signs of human life, just an infinite, overwhelming expanse of water. After riding for a while, right in the dead center of the ocean, they spot a peculiar and unusual area. This spot looks starkly different from the rest of the open sea. It is an atoll lagoon. This place is typically calm and isolated, but during high tide, it temporarily connects with the main ocean. The moment they lay eyes on it, excitement flashes across their faces. They believe they have found the absolute perfect playground to mess around in. Little do they know, this is about to become the single biggest mistake of their lives. Slowly, silently, and without a single warning sign, a deadly danger begins to encircle them. Suddenly, while riding at a breakneck speed, one of the jet skis violently shudders as it slams into something massive lurking beneath the surface. Before anyone can even process what is happening, the jet ski flips completely over. Everything happens so fast that no one has a chance to stabilize themselves. In the chaos, a phone slips from their hands, plummets straight into the water, and vanishes into the dark depths below. Hearing the commotion, Anna panics and immediately scrambles up to see what on earth just happened. But as she scans the horizon, all she can see is a single jet ski drifting aimlessly in the distant water. Everything else falls into an eerie, suffocating silence. A few seconds later, the two people who fell into the water break the surface, gasping for air. Their breathing is heavy, and absolute terror is written all over their faces. Julie, who is by far the most panicked among them, frantically scrambles onto a floating pad. Trembling, she demands to know what just happened, but nobody has an answer. Rigaud, who is perhaps the most carefree and reckless of the group, is only worried about his jet ski. He casually assumes it was just a minor collision with some debris. Without thinking it through, he dives right back into the water and begins swimming out toward the flipped jet ski. But as he strokes further away, a realization slowly dawns on him that something is horribly, terribly wrong. The casual demeanor vanishes, replaced by visible dread. He desperately turns around and tries to swim back to safety, but it is already too late. Just as he reaches the floating pad and stretches his hand out to climb up, an unseen, monstrous force violently yanks him downward into the abyss. It takes less than a second for everything to end. The two girls watching from above are left frozen in shock, completely unable to comprehend what just happened. The very next moment, the water right in front of them rapidly turns into a sickening, deep crimson red. Although they cannot see what monstrous entity is hiding beneath the surface, they know with absolute certainty that this is no ordinary accident. Alarm bells instantly go off in Anna's head. She realizes with terrifying clarity that if they do not find a way out of here immediately, they will suffer the exact same gruesome fate. She makes an instant decision. They must stay as far away from the water as humanly possible. Right then, her eyes catch sight of a jagged, exposed rock formation standing a short distance away. And right there, their brutal fight for survival officially begins. Anna, as soon as she sees that rock, a small flicker of hope ignites inside her. She immediately signals Julie, telling her that if they want to stay alive, they have to reach that rock formation at all costs. Exercising extreme caution, the two girls begin paddling the floating pad in that direction. Every single movement they make now is calculated and deliberate. They are terrified that even the slightest unnecessary splash or vibration will draw the attention of the unknown horror back to them. They creep forward across the water, holding their breath, their hearts hammering violently against their chests. The atmosphere is dead silent, but beneath that silence lies a paralyzing fear. Suddenly, both of them freeze dead in their tracks. Something unimaginably massive is passing directly beneath them with chilling silence. As they peer over the edge into the water, the blood freezes in their veins. Gliding right underneath their fragile pad is a colossal, nearly 9-meter-long killer whale. It moves slowly, unhurriedly, almost as if it is consciously observing them and studying its prey. The smeared blood of their friend is vividly visible across its massive body, and as it passes right beneath them, ripples of bloody water splash up, hitting them directly. Now, it isn't just fear on their faces, it is the literal, cold realization of impending death. Refusing to take any more chances, the two girls abandon caution and begin pushing the floating pad toward the rock with every ounce of strength they possess. This time, they don't move slowly. They paddle as furiously and fast as humanly possible. They convince themselves that if they can just plant their feet on that solid rock, they might actually survive. But just as they draw agonizingly close to the edge of the rock, the floating pad violently jerks to a halt. Before they can even figure out what went wrong, the pad starts getting dragged backward. The girls put all their muscle into it, frantically slapping and clawing at the water with their bare hands, desperate to move forward. But it is completely futile. It feels as though an immensely powerful, unstoppable force is towing them backward. Slowly but surely, they are dragged right back to the exact spot where they started. After a few agonizing seconds, the pulling force abruptly vanishes, and the pad falls still again. Anna desperately tries to deduce how this happened. Her eyes track to the back of the pad, where she notices a rope trailing into the water. The truth hits her instantly. The whale had intentionally grabbed that trailing rope to drag them back. This wasn't just a random, chaotic animal attack. The creature was deliberately playing with them. Anna immediately yanks the rope out of the water to prevent it from happening again. However, another terrifying realization begins to take shape in her mind. She recalls that killer whales possess incredibly high intelligence, roughly equivalent to that of a 15-year-old human. The calculated manner in which the creature has been behaving makes it obvious that it isn't just hunting for food. It is playing a twisted game. Just then, Anna looks closely at the whale's dorsal fin as it surfaces, and she notices something highly unusual. The whale's fin is not upright and straight. It is severely bent and collapsed to one side. Seeing this, Anna instantly connects the dots. This is no wild, normal whale. This creature has spent a vast portion of its life in captivity. Whales kept in commercial aquariums do not have the space to swim freely in straight lines. They are forced to swim in small, repetitive circles continuously. This structural restriction places unilateral water pressure on their dorsal fin, causing it to gradually collapse and bend over time. Furthermore, the repetitive stress of leaping out of the water during artificial entertainment shows wreaks havoc on their bodies. It is clear as day. This whale once lived among humans. But the burning question remains, why has it become so hyper-aggressive and lethal? The reality is that this whale was recently released from an aquarium. Due to prolonged confinement, its health had deteriorated drastically, and the aquarium owners feared it would either die under their watch or cause a catastrophic incident. To avoid liability, they dumped it back into the open ocean. However, they failed to realize how an animal traumatized by years of captivity would react when suddenly thrown back into the wild sea. These thoughts race frantically through Anna's head, but she knows she doesn't have the luxury of time to analyze past tragedies. The brutal reality is that the whale now views humans as its sworn enemies, and if they just sit there like sitting ducks, it will pick them off one by one. Anna takes a deep, stabilizing breath, forces herself to calm down, and looks at Julie. She firmly explains that they have only one shot left. They must reach that rock. She continuously pumps words of courage into Julie. Terrified that if Julie succumbs to blind panic, she will make a fatal error. Both girls watch the water intently, waiting for the precise moment when the whale moves away from their immediate perimeter. But right then, Julie suddenly summons an unexpected burst of desperate courage. Panic is still visibly etched into her face, but she makes a definitive choice anyway. Without uttering a single word of warning, she dives straight into the water. Anna is left completely paralyzed with shock. Frozen by sheer terror, Anna stays glued to the pad, while Julie swims furiously toward the rock all on her own. Julie's sudden plunge into the water instantly sends the tension skyrocketing. While Anna remains immobilized by fear on the drifting pad, Julie refuses to risk looking back even once. She pours every ounce of her life force into swimming toward the rock formation. As she thrashes through the water, items from her backpack slip out and scatter across the sea. But in this life-or-death moment, she couldn't care less about material possessions. Meanwhile, Anna's eyes suddenly land on an absolutely critical item. The battery for her hearing aid is floating away in the water. She reaches out desperately to grab it, but in that exact moment, she spots the shadow of the whale charging back toward them from the distance. Consumed by terror, Anna immediately abandons the battery and scrambles back onto the safety of the pad. This time, however, the whale doesn't target Anna directly. Its predatory focus shifts entirely to Julie, who is creating massive vibrations as she swims for her life. By this time, Julie has managed to reach the absolute edge of the rock. Sensing the mortal peril closing in right behind her, she blindly scrambles to climb up the jagged surface. The rocks are razor-sharp. They mercilessly slash and tear at her hands and legs. But with the primal fear of being eaten alive driving her, she completely numbs herself to the agonizing pain and successfully hauls herself up onto solid ground. Watching this from afar, Anna lets out a small sigh of relief, though she herself is still trapped out on the water. Acting quickly, Anna grabs her backpack and flings it across the water toward Julie so that their remaining survival supplies are safe on the rock. But in her frantic haste, an oversight occurs. The rope attached to the floating pad slips back down into the water, and neither of them notices. Safely atop the rock, Julie clears her head and devises a desperate plan. She picks up a heavy stone and shouts to Anna that she will throw rocks to distract the whale, drawing its attention away so Anna can make a swim for it. Despite her crippling fear, Anna begins mentally preparing herself. She summons every ounce of internal strength, reminding herself that it is now a matter of binary choice. Either she fights for her life, or she dies right here. But just as she coils her body to dive into the water, a bizarre, scraping sound echoes from right behind her. A realization hits her, and she spins around in sheer horror. She sees that the rope trailing in the water has snapped completely taut, pulled down by a massive force. The next instant, the floating pad begins violently hissing, rapidly losing its air and sinking into the water. Anna is officially out of options. She can either stay on the deflating plastic and drown, or plunge into the water and gamble with fate. Hardening her resolve, she dives into the sea. The moment she hits the water, she swims with frantic, explosive power. Though terror threatens to paralyze her limbs, stopping is no longer an option. Every single passing second brings the phantom sensation of teeth clamping onto her legs from below, but she refuses to slow down. After an agonizing, heart-pounding struggle, she finally reaches the base of the rock formation. With Julie's help, she hauls herself up, and both girls collapse onto the hard stone. They sit there panting, utterly exhausted, deeply traumatized, but miraculously alive. Once they catch their breath, they begin assessing their physical conditions. Julie's thigh is severely lacerated, oozing blood from a deep cut she sustained while frantically scaling the sharp rocks. Anna immediately tears off her own jacket and uses a sharp stone to shred the fabric into makeshift bandages. She tightly wraps half of the cloth around Julie's bleeding wound and uses the remaining fabric to bind her own foot, which had been deeply cut by a sharp object during her frantic dive. After managing their injuries as best as they can, they sit closely together and begin analyzing their grim reality. They piece together the situation, deducing that the whale must have accidentally wandered into this atoll lagoon during high tide. When the tide receded, the water level dropped, trapping the massive creature inside. In essence, this natural lagoon has transformed into a cage for the whale, highly reminiscent of the claustrophobic aquariums it grew up in. This explains its extreme, unbridled hostility. It perceives anyone entering this enclosed space as an invading captor and strikes with lethal intent. As this realization sinks in, utter despair washes over both girls. They have no jet skis left, no way to navigate the waters, and absolutely no means of calling for help. Their solitary thread of hope rests on the off chance that a passing vessel might spot them. Anna opens the salvaged backpack to audit their supplies, but the inventory is devastating. All that remains is a single piece of chewing gum and a small, sealed container. Absolutely everything else has been lost to the sea. Left with no other choice, they break the chewing gum in half and share it. This pathetic morsel constitutes their entire sustenance for the day. During the search, Julie unearths a clear plastic bag, and a brilliant survival idea strikes her. She blows air into the bag and seals it tight. Her plan is to utilize solar distillation. The blazing heat of the sun will evaporate the moisture trapped inside, condensing it into tiny droplets of fresh water along the plastic walls. Though it will yield only a few precious drops, in their dehydrated state, it could mean the difference between life and death. Watching her, Anna exclaims in admiration, "You are a genius!" But Julie solemnly tempers the excitement, pointing out that the process will require at least 8 to 10 hours of waiting. With absolutely nothing left to do, the two girls huddle closely together on the cramped rock, conserving their energy, and begin the agonizing wait. Slowly, the brutal hours tick away, and daylight gives way to the dim hues of evening. Suddenly, the distant, unmistakable hum of a ship's engine echoes across the water. The girls bolt upright, waving their arms frantically and screaming for help with every shred of lung power they have left. But the ship is far too distant. Their desperate cries are completely swallowed by the vastness of the ocean. They are forced to watch in absolute, helpless agony as the ship slowly disappears over the horizon. With the departure of the ship, the final embers of hope within them begin to die out. The fragile optimism they felt just moments ago shatters completely. Anna and Julie slump back down onto the cold rock, physically spent, emotionally drained, and entirely broken inside. But then, Anna's vacant gaze locks onto something floating out in the water. She squints through the dimming light, trying to identify the object drifting toward their rock on the shifting waves. The true nature of the object hits her, sending a shiver of pure horror down her spine. It is a severed human hand. The sight is so deeply grotesque and terrifying that both girls are frozen in stunned silence for several seconds. But as the hand drifts closer, they notice a waterproof tactical flashlight tightly strapped to it. No matter how overwhelming their terror and revulsion are, that flashlight is a priceless asset that could save their lives. Summoning a deep reservoir of courage, they hold onto each other for balance, step toward the slippery edge of the rock, and fight back the intense urge to vomit. Gritting their teeth, they manage to pry the flashlight away from the dead hand. Now, at the very least, they possess a tool to broadcast distress signals into the night should another vessel pass by. The dark night sets in, moving at an agonizingly slow pace, but no rescue appears on the black horizon. The combined forces of exhaustion, terror, and starvation begin to break their spirits. Just as they are on the absolute brink of giving up all hope, they remember the plastic bag. Checking it, they find that a small amount of water droplets has successfully condensed inside. With extreme care, they split the moisture, letting the tiny drops coat their parched, swollen throats. The relief is instantaneous, but the volume is tragically small. It barely puts a dent in their profound dehydration and weakness. Amidst the darkness, Anna remembers another vital detail. The previous day, she had noticed a cluster of wild oysters clinging to the lower base of the rocks, which could serve as a desperate source of food. Knowing the immense danger, she decides to take a massive gamble. She slowly slides her lower body into the dark water, her heart leaping into her throat with every passing second, terrified that the whale will materialize from the blackness. Moving as fast as her trembling hands allow, she pries a few oysters loose and scrambles back onto the safety of the dry rock. In her frantic rush, her forehead violently slams against a jagged edge, leaving her with a bleeding gash, but she ignores it. She has secured food. However, a new problem presents itself. They have no tools to pry the rock-hard oyster shells open. Anna brainstorms frantically for a moment, and out of sheer desperation, she reaches into the bag and pulls out the small, sealed container. The moment Julie recognizes the container, she lunges forward, desperately trying to pull Anna's hand away. This is no ordinary box. It holds the cremated ashes of Anna's late ex-boyfriend. At this moment, the tragic backstory of Anna's life lays bare. Years ago, Anna was an extraordinarily talented rising cello player with a bright future ahead of her. But one fateful night, while she was working a part-time shift, a violent armed robbery broke out at the establishment. During the brutal altercation, she sustained severe physical trauma that permanently damaged her hearing, stripping away her ability to play music. Worse still, her boyfriend, who had bravely lunged forward to protect her from the assailants, was shot and killed during the chaos. The overarching purpose of this entire ocean trip was intended to be a solemn ritual. Anna wanted to scatter his ashes into the open sea, finally granting him spiritual freedom and allowing herself to find closure. But under these grim circumstances, the survival of the living must take precedence over emotional sanctity. Brushing away tears, Anna uses the heavy metal lid of the urn as a makeshift tool. Together, the two girls smash the oyster shells open and consume the raw, slimy meat inside. The taste is utterly repulsive and foul, but it provides the critical caloric energy required to keep their failing bodies alive. Now that the urn has already been used for survival, Anna decides that this is the moment to lay her boyfriend's memory to rest. Standing at the edge, she gently pours the ashes into the water, watching silently as the gray powder dissolves into the waves. But the heavy emotional atmosphere forces a dark, suffocating secret out of Julie. Unable to bear the crushing weight of her guilt any longer, Julie breaks down and confesses a horrifying truth. She reveals that the armed robbery years ago was not a random coincidence or an act of fate. It was entirely orchestrated by her. Anna listens, feeling her entire world shatter into pieces. Julie weeps, explaining that back then, she was in desperate, drowning financial debt. She had discovered that the restaurant where Anna worked held massive amounts of cash on site every night. Driven by greed, she tipped off a dangerous criminal acquaintance of hers to rob the place, ensuring him it would be an easy score. However, she never intended for Anna to get hurt. On that specific night, Anna had unexpectedly swapped shifts with a coworker, placing herself directly in the line of fire. That single chain of events ruined Anna's musical career and cost her boyfriend his life. Hearing this betrayal from her absolute best friend completely breaks Anna. She refuses to listen to another word, another excuse, or another tearful apology. Shaking with rage and sorrow, she physically distances herself from Julie on the small rock. In a final act of absolute rejection, she yanks her hearing aid out of her ear, plunging herself into total silence, symbolically cutting off any remaining connection to Julie. Yet, the brutal reality remains unchanged. She cannot run away. They are both still tightly trapped on the exact same isolated rock, and their physical conditions are deteriorating with every sunrise. Julie looks at Anna and realizes that if someone doesn't take drastic action immediately, they will both die on this rock. She resolves to make a dangerous decision. She decides to intentionally draw the whale's wrath onto herself, creating a window of opportunity for Anna to escape. Her plan is to dive into the water and swim toward the distant shoreline where they initially entered the lagoon, banking on the fact that the whale will chase her, thereby giving Anna a clear path to swim to a safer, more accessible rock formation. This is a deliberate attempt, trading her own life to ensure Anna's survival. Without a word, Julie quietly slips into the glass-like water. The surface of the water is deceptively calm, but beneath that placid facade, a horrifying game begins. The silence hanging over the lagoon is heavy, acting as the classic calm before an absolute storm. Julie swims forward, acutely aware that the apex predator is patrolling the dark waters beneath her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Meanwhile, Anna, having disconnected her hearing aid, remains completely oblivious to the unfolding danger, entirely wrapped in her silent world of grief. She doesn't even realize Julie has abandoned the rock until she turns around and finds the stone empty. Panic surging through her, Anna walks to the edge and screams Julie's name over and over, begging her to swim back. But it is far too late. Julie has already crossed the point of no return. Suddenly, a terrifying low-frequency acoustic vibration rumbles through the water, a sound that strikes pure, primal dread into the human heart. Julie knows the whale has locked onto her coordinates. Unleashing every drop of adrenaline, she thrashes through the water with explosive speed, her mind entirely focused on the shore. Within seconds, the colossal killer whale breaches the surface right behind her, closing the distance with terrifying ease. From the rock, Anna watches the chase unfold and instantly understands Julie's true intention. She is doing this intentionally to buy Anna a chance. Anna refuses to waste a single second. She plunges into the water, swimming furiously in the opposite direction toward a neighboring rock structure. But then, something strange happens. The whale, which was chasing Julie, suddenly halts its pursuit. Sensing the new movements created by Anna, the highly intelligent creature's attention shifts entirely, and it turns around and charges directly toward Anna at blinding speed. Anna is now in mortal peril. Terrified, she pushes her body past its limits, reaches the base of the secondary rock, and violently hauls herself up. Her heart batters against her ribs so violently it feels as though it will burst from her chest. On the other side of the lagoon, Julie uses this distraction to make a final, desperate dash for the shallow shoreline. Her feet finally touch solid ground, and for a fleeting second, it feels as though she has actually beaten the odds and survived. Right then, the heavens seem to answer her prayers as a rescue helicopter flies in the sky above. A sudden surge of hope re-energizes both girls. Julie screams at the top of her lungs, flailing her arms wildly, and even writes massive SOS letters into the sand so they are clearly visible from the air. From her distant rock, Anna echoes the frantic signals, waving her arms. But the helicopter passes right over them without noticing a thing, slowly vanishing into the distance. This crushing disappointment completely breaks Julie's mental fortitude. Her resolve shatters, and she collapses into a state of furious rage and agony. She screams curses at the sky, blaming fate, and tearing at herself in pure desperation. But wrapped in her profound grief and anger, she commits a massive error. She completely forgets that she is still standing at the absolute edge of danger. Suddenly, an explosive force hits her from below. Julie tries to grab the ground, clawing her nails deep into the mud to prevent herself from being dragged into the water. For a fraction of a second, it looks like she might hold on. But the next instant, the whale clamps its massive jaws onto her leg and yanks her down into the water. Her leg is completely torn apart. Against such a horrific injury, Julie cannot survive for long. Within moments, she dies from severe blood loss. Watching this horrific scene unfold from her distant perch, Anna's soul is completely crushed. She is now utterly, terrifyingly alone in the middle of the ocean. No friends, no help, surrounded by the literal fear of death. The rock she occupies is slightly closer to the shore, but it is dangerously small and narrow, offering barely enough surface area for her to crouch. She sits frozen, paralyzed by fear, unable to move a single muscle. To make matters worse, the environment itself turns hostile. The sky rapidly darkens into an ominous color, violent storm clouds roll in, and sharp streaks of lightning rip through the atmosphere. A massive storm is brewing. For Anna, this storm carries a unique brand of terror. Her hearing aid has completely died due to water damage. She is trapped in absolute, profound silence. This sudden lack of auditory awareness multiplies her terror exponentially. She can no longer rely on sound to warn her from which direction the danger will strike next. Trembling, she clicks on the tactical flashlight, desperate for a sliver of visual comfort, but fate deals her another cruel hand. The flashlight flickers and dies completely. It feels as though the entire universe has actively abandoned her to the dark. Suddenly, the skis open up, and a torrential downpour begins. Seizing the opportunity, Anna cups her hands, catching the fresh rainwater and gulping it down greedily. It is the first real relief her body has received in hours. But as she wipes the water from her face and turns around, her eyes fall upon the water. The whale is hovering right at the edge of her tiny rock, closer than it has ever been. Anna looks down, locking eyes with the massive creature. Through the curtain of rain, she notices a long, deep, jagged scar running across the whale's eye. A profound realization washes over her. This whale has also known immense pain, torture, and confinement. It spent its life in a prison, and now it is trapped yet again in this shallow lagoon. For a brief moment, Anna feels a small sense of empathy for the creature. But she knows that only one of them is walking out of this lagoon alive. It is either her or the whale. Looking across the water at the distant body of Julie, something fundamental shifts inside Anna. The paralyzing fear evaporates, replaced by a cold, hardened resolve. She is done running. She is going to fight. Right then, a blinding flash of lightning illuminates the sky, followed by a massive crack of thunder, and Anna knows this chaos is her window. She dives off the rock into the churning water and swims toward the shore with everything she has. Miraculously, the whale does not intercept her. The violent storm has created an absolute chaotic mess of acoustic noise in the water, completely scrambling the whale's highly sensitive echolocation system and rendering it incapable of tracking her movements. Leveraging this tactical blind spot, Anna thrashes through the waves and finally stumbles onto the solid shoreline, shattered, bleeding, but alive. Her very first act on land is to honor her fallen friend. She uses her bare hands to dig into the sand, creating a modest, respectful grave for Julie. Once she composes herself, a memory sparks. Julie's phone was a heavily rated waterproof model, and it was safely stowed away inside the jet ski's onboard storage compartment. Harnessing the last remnants of her strength, she takes a final risk and wades back into the shallows to retrieve the compartment box. Fate finally smiles upon her. She successfully pulls the storage box from the wreckage. Inside, alongside the phone, she finds a surprising object, a small, carved piece of a cello. Julie had secretly bought it as a gift for her, hoping it would inspire Anna to reclaim her old life. Looking at it, she leaves the sentimental object behind, prioritizing the phone to call for emergency rescue services. Suddenly, the water behind her begins to churn violently. The storm has passed as quickly as it arrived, meaning the ambient acoustic noise has vanished. The whale's echolocation is fully operational again, and it is locking onto her position for a final strike. Anna realizes with absolute clarity that there is no more room for evasion. Her only path to survival is a direct, bloody confrontation. She plunges into the water, diving beneath the surface. She grabs the heavy metal cello component she had just cast aside, and as the colossal whale opens its massive jaws and lunges at her with terrifying speed, Anna times her strike perfectly. With a ferocious motion, she drives the sharp object straight into the whale's eye. The whale thrashes in agonizing pain, its eye completely destroyed. In that exact moment, the massive ocean tide begins to surge rapidly into the lagoon, raising the water levels instantly. The atoll lagoon reconnects with the vast open ocean. Blinded, wounded, and finally granted an escape route into the deep blue sea, the whale abandons the fight and swims out into the infinite ocean, leaving Anna behind. Anna, completely exhausted but triumphant, grips her life jacket tight and floats calmly on the surface of the rising water, looking up at the sky as she waits for help. This gripping tale is not merely a